Well, kia ora koutou, ina hou e whā. Everyone, welcome from everywhere, that you've all come from different parts of New Zealand, and ko Bena takawingawa no Taranaki o. And did you want to...
ko Puhunga Tora Tamanga, ko Tāki Te Awa, ko Ngāpuhi Te Iwi, ko Ngāti Rauau I Te Hapu, kia ora koutou.
Yeah, cool. So actually, I'm a little bit more nervous about being filmed than I am talking to you guys. So Mark in the background there is going to film what we're doing and presenting today, so that it's a downloadable resource. We don't know if this will fly and how good it'll be, but so that's what's happening in the background there. So yeah. So we'll just get stuck in and started. So we thought the talk today is about professional permaculture. We've been doing this for 15 years in terms of a permaculture business, but we thought we'd start first off with a little, who are we, what do we do, etc., and then we'll get stuck into the more kind of business end of what it takes to run a permaculture business as a day-to-day, enterprise.
Yeah, and the focus is often in permaculture, we're very excited about the work that we're doing on the ground, but not all of us stop to think about the structures and the processes and the tools that we need to be able to do effectively. So that's really what today's talk is about, and we'll show some examples as well, but today's talk is more about how to run a successful business that's doing permaculture design.
Yeah, cool. Oh, and the way that I like to work, if you've got questions, please just ask as we go through, then I can find out what you like to know and whether I'm connecting with what it is you want to know, essentially. We'll also have a Q&A at the end if we've got time, but do feel free to ask questions. So Dan and I, we are a couple. We've been married for 22 years. Yeah, and running Greenbridge for, something like that.
25 years, I think.
Yeah. And been running Greenbridge for 15 years. We had a larger team until recently. There's 3 of us at the moment, and just, life fluctuates. And we do healthy homes, which is Dan's part of the business, and regenerative landscapes, which is mine, and the community resilient projects is really a meshing of those 2 aspects, the landscapes and the homes. The beginnings, right, okay. So Dan was running a successful business in Wellington, and do you want to pitch into that bit first?
I was running a business in Wellington after we'd been abroad for about 4 years, working overseas, came back. But about once a month I found myself thinking, what am I even doing this for? I'd figured out how to make reasonable money, a 6-figure income, doing sort of 3 or 4 days a week. So sort of some of those things were working quite well. But I find myself thinking, what's the point? What am I actually really contributing? And so when the showroom I was working out of, was running my business out of in Wellington, our lease came up and we didn't have the rights for renewal. Rather than spend money and recreate it somewhere else, decided to close that business down and move to Taranaki for 2 main reasons: to make family the primary focus, and this is where Bena's from. She grew up south of Maunga, and had grandparents here for our children, and we brought with us the question, what does worthwhile work look like? Probably.
Yeah, and so we bought a 10-acre property with the idea of, well, let's do something sustainable on it and start, a sustainable business, knowing not in what that would mean at all. We made a lot of mistakes, and we had some successes, and the 10 acres has been a guinea pig site really for our learning, so that when we are talking and working with clients, we know our stuff. So this is our children right at the start, planting little Tagazasti trees. We lived in a caravan through snow. It was really hard yakka. We had no running hot water for 3 years. We know how to develop properties on the smell of an oily rag, and we know how to develop properties with cash flow as well. So we've done both.
Yeah, and it's worthwhile saying that both Ben and I are design trained, so we both got degrees in design. And so we were lucky enough to learn under Kamba Burwell, so who you heard about earlier today, as a permaculture teacher before we moved back to Taranaki.
Yeah, in fact,
there. She was part of our team for maybe 7 years until recently, when it got a bit quiet, and she's jumped into doing some work for an engineering firm. Well,
and funnily enough, when we did our PDC with Karma, she said, you should start a business and I'll come and work for you. And we got the best right at the start. Yeah.
And so the point of me bringing that up is when we came across permaculture as a design system, as people that had already trained and in design, it made sense. And so we were able to apply a lot of that quite quickly. And we'd also been working professionally as designers. And so we had that transferable knowledge to apply to permaculture.
Yeah. In fact, my thesis at design school was very aligned. I didn't know the word permaculture, but very aligned with what permaculture was. So it really connected for me when I came across it. Just a few pictures of our 10 acres as we developed it from scratch. That's our house site at the moment. Sits sort of down a third of a hill slope. You'll know from a permaculture perspective that that's where the little thermal belt is. Won't go into details around that development of the veggie gardens and edible gardens around the house. Yeah. Is there 2 slides there, Dan? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and so that's the property as of about 3 or 4 years ago. We run courses from there, do regen grazing with our stock. These are trees now, so at the start the property was completely bare, very eroded. So we've developed quite an oasis. No, and you can see we've planted thousands of trees. So that's the backbone to regenerating a landscape, really. How do we play that little one? Yeah, so this is a quick little snapshot video that we put together as a promo for the Sustainable Backyards Trail that we've been in the past. It is a bit out of date, about 4 years out of date, but you'll see the development over time. There we go. We're not open for the trail, so don't turn up tomorrow. We'll be in our pajamas, or maybe probably here. So, but yeah, there we go. And next one there. Yeah, and so just quickly before we move into kind of the philosophy that underpins our business and the way that we work, we just wanted to show you that because it's walking the talk. You know, we've done what we do for our clients. We are trialing, and sometimes clients are guinea pigs, but more often than not, we've made the mistakes on our own property, and we know that we're implementing tried and true good practice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the other thing that's worth saying to that is it's really hard to do something right the first time. Whenever you do something the first time, you're going to make mistakes, and so we've done it ourselves and we've made mistakes, but we've also done hundreds, and I don't know how many hundreds of clients we've had now, but it'll be a big number, and so you learn from each job, and so that's how you make less and less mistakes and get more and more learnings by that experience.
Yeah, and just one last thing. So I'm not sure if you're aware and how much you know about us as a business. So probably about 50% of my work is national and 50% of it is local. And the irony of that, so this is sort of from a business perspective, the more national work you do, the more local work you do. because you end up getting the kudos of, well, if you get work national. So keep that in mind. It's always worth saying yes to those projects that are further afield, as long as you can maybe get there in your electric vehicle or by bus. So it's
We've actually talked about it at permaculture events in the past, that sometimes there's a strange thing that people will respect people from outside the region more than they'll respect their local experts.
It's just,
And so there's even this idea that you talk to your colleagues in different regions, and if the work comes up, they'll recommend you from outside and vice versa.
You both have design backgrounds.
Yes.
Interested to know what qualifications you got. Yeah.
we knew that would be a question, so we've got the partai in here, and we'll go into the pathways of what works for us and what,
So but specifically what you were asking is, I did industrial design, and Bena did interior architecture.
Yeah.
So this is, you guys should know about this, but often we actually did this presentation recently at the local Polytech WIT, and just talking about the difference between ego and eco. This is just talking about philosophies, some of the challenges that are facing, why things aren't maybe going the way they should. So putting man at the top, or people at the top, versus being part of an ecosystem. So the disconnect, the separateness, centralisation, money is king, and a growth mindset. So coming up with a different ideas other than those ideas. And this guy's pretty smart from all accounts, and he said we cannot solve the problems that we created with the same thinking we used to create them. So, and I see this still happening a lot. So even in the engineering groups, so there's what's it called, the engineering movement for regenerative practice. They're basically trying to fix the problems they're creating, but they're still using the same thinking to try and solve those problems, and it just doesn't really work.
Hence why permaculture is a good approach, thinking outside the box.
So we're a values-based business. We call ourselves an impact enterprise. A lot of these terms we obviously wouldn't have been familiar with when we started, and so sort of grew into them or came across things and said, yeah, we're doing that. And so sort of adopted this. This is just a simplified version of a theory of change impact strategy, so understanding what it is you're there to do, what's the purpose of your organisation or your business. So at the heart of what we were about was healthy people and planet, and we had 4 aspects to that. So healthy homes, which I lead, regenerative landscapes, which Bena leads, sustainable education, which we haven't been doing as much of lately, and then connected communities, which is pulling together various resources. Did you want to say anything else?
No, it's all good.
I also just wanted to mihi and acknowledge Te Ao Māori and the knowledge that's available to us in New Zealand from that space. So we have a real blessing in that we were the last country to be colonised, and that means
if you can call that a blessing.
The last bit was a blessing, but and that means we've got a shorter journey back to Indigenous knowledge than most people have. And in some ways that makes it easier. And so there's a lot of Te Ao Māori knowledge that can be,
It's very alignment with permaculture.
Yeah.
Cool. So this was a bit of feedback that we got at WIT, is we went through all this kind of business side of things, and then it's like, but what do you actually do? Because in the past when we've done presentations, we've talked about our work and projects, and people get quite inspired by that. So we're going to sandwich this. We're going to show you a couple of projects at the start, community ones. We thought you'd be quite interested in that. Then we'll do all the kind of, businessy stuff, and then at the end we'll show you a few more projects as long as there's some more time. Does that work for you guys? Yeah, okay,
Even
cool.
if it doesn't, that's how
That's how we've set it up, but we could flick. Yeah, do you want to talk to that one?
So this is the first pocket neighbourhood done in New Plymouth, which is John Mana Way, which is, what's the area called?
Marfell.
Marfell.
Yeah.
Edge of Marfell. And it's very much a compromise project in terms of the philosophies of pocket neighbourhoods. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term pocket neighbourhoods.
Mm-hmm.
A concept that's come largely out of the States, and it's connected closely with co-housing, and it's also connected with papakainga. Like, there's a lot of similarities in the different approaches. Normally you wouldn't have driven access. This is just a plan view here with 6 houses and a shared landscape through the middle. Normally you would separate the vehicles from the living space and create shared living. So this development had already been partially planned, and the first 2 houses were already started before we came on board. So it was, how much could we improve it? And even with the compromise impacts that we're able to have, it still had really good impacts. Now going back there, the people that live there, the owners, rave about living there in the community aspect, that they do share meals, etc. and both the landscape environment and the buildings are specifically designed to achieve that. Probably don't have time to talk into the philosophies and the design guidings behind that today, so I'll just keep moving. So also done similar things at a larger scale. This is a project up in Auckland, Bena Gardens with Open Residential, which is a big development company. And we got involved because they were looking to develop the first 10 Homestar rated apartments in New Zealand, and so we're like, that's something we can get behind. And Bena led with, actually we had the whole team working on this one.
So community projects tend to obviously take the whole team because it takes a lot more wider knowledge.
And so the aspect that we worked on in this was not the buildings, but how to create community supporting landscape in between the buildings. And so again, there's a lot of things that we were doing in terms of creating those outcomes, which we probably don't have time to go
No,
into.
things like bump spaces and edible gardens.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was the maintenance manager for Mace Landscapes.
Mace Landscapes,
We installed that.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
And it worked. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's so sweet to actually hear that feedback. Thank you. This is in Auckland, Hobsonville
Yeah,
Point.
so that's some photos of some of the first.
Yep. So the projects we're showing you are ones that, like, we do a lot of projects, and many of them the clients will install themselves over time, or I do project management, installing a lot of the projects and planting as well. But you know, they've happened. They're not just drawings on a page. These are actual, you know, projects that are live.
Can you just, when you do one of these, just give us an idea of the principle or the primary principles behind your design, so that we actually can understand and implement ourselves?
So we can, and it's just we're aware that we've had 45 minutes and that's probably been
And so today I really appreciate that, Brian. The topic for today is the business focus of things, and so we're putting a few projects in there so you get context of what we do, and we'll touch on those a little bit, but we're going to focus mostly on, you know, running a permaculture business. But we're happy to chat anytime after about those principles as well.
Just grab us and have chats about that. Happy to do that, but otherwise we'll probably run out of time.
Cool. Just one more question.
So just from a clientele perspective,
Yes.
Both from essentially you're trying to understand the demographic of who you're working for, who you work for, who you market towards, and the balance of that and how that works. So there's a lot more to that question, but hopefully you understand.
We're going to hit on that. It was hard to know which order to put things, but we wanted you to get a feel for some of the projects. Then we're going to go into those nitty-gritties.
So that very shortly. So this is just another example. This project hasn't been completed yet. This was in Pika Pika. Actually, Adam Sheen is one of the clients. He's here today. And so this was an eco-village essentially. So I can't remember how many dwellings, maybe 8 dwellings with a
8
shared
to 12,
tiny homes, komatua housing, and a people-centric space. So there's a bunch of things that go into the design, but if we talk about that.
Well, just but very quickly, like corralling the car, so the car isn't within that space other than emergency vehicles. Nesting dwellings so that you have privacy, but they're actually quite close together. You've got a range of different typologies in the houses so that you've got flexibility in the future as you move forward with changing demographic needs. You have bump spaces that are built into there, like letterbox pods rather than individual letterboxes, so you're creating spaces where people can bump. You know, little playgrounds and edible gardens. There's a lot of things that go into the regenerative side of things. Oh, this is another project that's local here, one that I led, which was year-long at Waimata School. In fact, they're in the Sustainable Backyards Trail, so you can go and see this project. And it was what was called a rich topic for the school, and it included whānau groups right from age 5 to age 12. And rather than bring in the expert, which in that instance was me, and rather than design it for the children and for the school, we involved the children. So they got, can you flick back to that one? So they got involved in, you know, understanding fruit trees and where to put them, and we got out there and, you know, built the structures with the kids. So it was very hands-on and very participatory, which was great. Oh, and we used the holistic management tools as well because it was a community project. That's where we tend to use that a bit more. Yep, and you can just see this. This is quite a bit old now, Chauncey, like it's all like this with lots of fruit trees and
So it was just a beer paddock.
Yep. And part of what we do with our work is, an aspect of it is giving back to the community wherever we can. So I worked on this project almost full-time for about 3 months, and then I ran the Garden and Sustainability Club for about 5 years. Yeah, it's just kind of part of what we do as well. Sits in the background a little bit.
Okay, so
I'll let you do
talking
that.
now to sort of into the nuts and bolts and stuff. So business feasibility, who are your customers? First question. Segments. Looks like it's got a second part of that. What problems are you trying to solve for them? So this is some of the key questions as a business you need to get really solid on right at the outset. If you don't understand those two, then you're going to struggle. You're just going to have to learn by mistakes, and that's a slow, painful, expensive way to learn. How will you solve those problems? What's your unique value proposition? Your clear message explaining what is your offer and what makes it different in the marketplace? How are you going to solve those problems for those clients? What advantage do you have over your competitors? And so that's not necessarily a really commercial idea, but maybe you bring more of a value-based approach. Maybe you're got more of a cooperative, collaborative approach to designing or working with your client. So there's various things that you can bring that isn't necessarily just the traditional thought processes. What are your paths to market? How are you actually going to get in front of your customers? And this is one of the main things to sort out, and it's something that we still work on. So the market's obviously tightened up a heck of a lot over the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So we've got to revamp and relook at this, because we were going really well with a team of 6 and now we're down to a team of 3. And so we need to look back at marketing. And ideally, your marketing should be strong in the times where you're affluent and doing well, so that when the times aren't so well, you're the first people will to think to get in. Minimum viable product. I'm a big believer in this, particularly now. I'll tell you a little bit more about what I've been doing for the last 3 or so years. I spent a bunch of money developing a product and taking it to market, and it hasn't fully succeeded yet. So it still owes me 3 years and probably $500,000. So being able to come up with an idea of what you want to take to market and then test it with the minimum possible input and then get immediate feedback from the market. I'm a big believer in that, and so I tried doing it the other way for a change to see what that looked like, and it hasn't worked out for me yet. What metrics will you use to measure your success? And that's going to be different for everyone, but it's really important to understand that. If you don't understand what success looks like, then you don't know whether you're on the path towards where you want to be getting to or not. And how will you make money? It sounds pretty, mercenary, but it's really key. If you can't make money doing what you're doing, you can't keep doing it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how good your values are or how good your intent is. If you can't pay your bills and you can't reinvest money into the organisation or business that you're running,
Well, your business isn't sustainable, right?
it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So
Finding a yield.
100%. Exactly.
So cost structures, revenue streams, margin, is it even viable? Understanding how a product and service will make money, and understanding the difference between a service and a product, or productising a service, and understanding how those things make money and how viable they are.
Is that the last? Before we flick onto that one, Dan, how many people here are running a permaculture business or have intent to run a permaculture business? Yeah. Okay, so great, we've got the right crowd, got the right demographic. Yeah, so that's really good. So hopefully you'll have things to teach us, and hopefully we've got things that will be useful for you as well.
And it's worthwhile saying that for quite a few of these things, we'll be teaching a few of you how to suck eggs, i.e.
You'll probably already know. Yeah.
And I'll acknowledge that, but permaculturists aren't traditionally great at this stuff, and so that's why we wanted to talk to it in this setting at a permaculture hui to say, okay, we need to lift our game. When we started Greenbridge, we specifically decided that our market was not for permaculturists. They're going to do it for themselves. We were heading more towards the mainstream, and in order to do that, you need to sort a few things out, and you need to think through stuff a bit more.
Yeah.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Go for it.
Go for it.
You mentioned marketing during good times so that you become a known brand. Is that something that you have been doing, or is it something you...
We actually have failed a bit in this area.
Do you know what our weakest link at the moment, I don't know if any of you have done the HDM sort of approach, is marketing? Because fortunately or unfortunately, I would say fortunately, but 80% of my work, and at least on my end of the business with landscaping, comes from referral. So a happy client refers me to a happy client refers me to a happy client. That's my marketing. So, and I'm not really that great. Well, I've learned to have to be sustainable in business, to put myself out there, to wear a Greenbridge t-shirt, to say hi, you know, at the end of the phone, oh, this is Greenbridge that you've reached. I really struggled with that, you know, the marketing of promoting yourself. But you won't, but I love what I do. And if I didn't, I wouldn't get to keep doing what I do. So, yeah.
Because the reason I ask is, in a similar situation,
right.
90% of my work would be referrals.
Yes.
And I know if I marketed during good times, I would have so many leads. I'd be answering the phone all the time.
But you're so busy, yes.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
exciting thing is, though, if you do it well, then you get to choose your customers.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you get to do the best work during that time,
Yeah.
but you still have work during the quiet times.
And we'll touch on this a little bit, making sure you split in your week some time that you do that regardless and you book it in. Yeah.
And in the past, I've done that better. So I learned that from a previous business, that I was the go-to place because I was known in the Wellington market. We just haven't done it as effectively with Greenbridge. We have in some ways, but in other ways we haven't. And with the market really tightening up, it's something that we are aware that we need to refocus on and get better at.
Oh yeah, we're going to let you know the things that haven't worked as well and the mistakes, because that's what you learn from. Yeah, that's absolutely what you learn from.
So you talked about being clear on your direction in terms of what you want to specialise in and what you're good at. Again, in my line of work, I find that I'm like constantly, it's changing for me all the time. And I'm just curious if you guys have had any lessons from what you've been doing about how to potentially shortcut where you eventually want to go, if that makes sense.
I wouldn't say we've done it the shortcut way.
I know, we have
We've done it the hard, slow way.
Lessons from what you've done that help anyone else shortcut
Do
that process.
you mean knowing what it is you want to do and offer to market? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so like for me, for example, I constantly see new things and I'm like, oh, I'd love to do that. And
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
And then I'd love to do that.
We totally struggled with that too.
So I'm
We
just
struggled with it for
curious if
years.
there's any lessons
Yep.
from short-
Particularly when it's
Yeah.
busy in the market, the thing that you need to get best at is saying no.
For sure.
That you need to say no a lot more often than you say yes. And so to be clear about that, it comes back to who do you, it goes back, first of all, what are your values? What are you there to do? What's the purpose of your business? Who are there for your customers? What are their problems that you're going to solve? And that should start, that's why we started with that stuff. Because it actually starts with your values. And values aren't values until they're tested and they're inconvenient. When they're inconvenient to uphold, that's what makes them values. Otherwise, they're just a nice idea.
It's,
Keep going.
I just related to that, there's a conflict in sustainability of a business too, right?
Yeah.
And like what helps your business be sustainable financially can conflict, or maybe not conflict, but can drag you away from some of the things you really want to do, right?
Well, in that sense, we were very staunch because Dan gave up a very successful business that was already running well and making a good income, working about 4 days a week in Wellington. So we started this business with the intent that this is what our values are. There's no plan B. This is what we're doing. So stubborn or stupid, I'm not sure, but we only do projects that have, regenerative, sustainable, organic, community focus. We don't do anything else. So that filters out people, and after a while you get known for that and it becomes a little bit nichey and people self-filter themselves. They already, your website can do that for you as well. But we should probably tick along, just so we can answer more detailed
Bena
questions
just
later.
said what I was going to throw in. So because what I do is very specific.
Yeah,
and I'm
yes.
as well. I have a little self-filter that I send out to leads that
Yes.
they self-select themselves, and sometimes what comes back then I'll pass them on to other people that I know
Perfect.
would be more relevant. So
Yeah.
you're not sort of having to say no, but you're
Yep.
redirecting.
Yeah, and then you get more and more of the clients that you do want.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. So just talking about some of the planning tools that we've found have been useful. Impact strategy we talked about earlier, so you can look up that through theory of change. So that can be a really useful thing to understand what you're trying to do. So what are your values? What impacts are you trying to have on your community and your, or we were talking about earlier today, your bioregion, etc. Your business story, understanding your story, that's part of your marketing, being able to communicate that to others. And that's part of the marketing process that gets buy-in from your market. So people understanding your story, why you do what you do, etc. professional collaborations. Bena will talk a bit more about that, but that it can be quite lonely. I'm sure people that put up their hands earlier saying that they're doing permaculture practice, if you're doing it by yourself, it's hard yakka. So having professional collaborations, both inside permaculture and outside, and we'll talk a little bit about that, really important. Holistic decision making, so I don't know if everyone's familiar with that tool. It's a tool we definitely use on the larger projects to help those community or larger projects make good decisions about where they're heading.
Did anyone here do Dan Palmer's? Who passed away now, but yeah, amazing course. That really shifted our business very quickly, didn't it?
I would say we were really struggling as a business to be clear about several things, about where we're going and why and how, and protecting our quality of life during the process. And within 2 months, we had increased our income, cut out a third of our working hours, etc. So that's a really useful tool. Yeah,
highly recommend that.
Client journey mapping. So that's a really useful tool as well. Understanding not only how you're going to get customers in terms of the funnel to meeting them, but once they become potential customers or customers, what does their journey look like through dealing with you? What is that? And actually thinking that through and really mapping that out so that you can design both an enjoyable experience but also an effective one. Humans, I know this is just text on the screen, which is a bit boring, but we'll get there. Human scaled business. We often talk about human scaled buildings, but also human scaled business. So I worked for the council for a year when things got quiet, and I'm really grateful for that experience, but good to see what non-human scaled organisations look like and how they don't operate. And so being a small business owner, I 1 to 4 people is really tough because you have to wear so many hats. There's so many skills that you have to master to be successful. It's probably one of the hardest things to do well because there's so much to learn. Then if you go to the large scale businesses, they often lose their values and the inefficiencies creep in. So looking at that sort of mid-sized business is what I've seen, sort of half a dozen to, I don't know what the top figure is, but it's probably somewhere in the low tens, as in 20 or 30 people. That sort of scale of business takes away from the stress of having to figure out everything for yourself while still being able to deliver. It obviously depends what you're doing as a business, but understanding what scale of business is good for you and your customer. Heart-centered business. So hopefully that's reasonably self-sufficient, but that's just about being true to your values. So if you've just focused on the money, then it's probably not going to work out that great. Or if you're just there for ego, equally that's probably not going to work out that great. So if you're there in service, that's probably a good place to start.
Definitely.
And the lean canvas. So I don't know if you guys have come across this, but this is a tool that I would highly recommend. You can just jump online and look up the lean canvas and find 1 in a million. But instead of doing a business plan, which might be 40 pages, what this does is on 1 page gets you to look at the crux of your business idea and is it viable, will it work, how are you going to make it work. And I've done the big business plans, I've got investors in on part of a business, done all that. I don't actually think it's very relevant in today's marketplace unless you're getting investors. That's the only reason you do it, so you can report and sort of share your knowledge. But as a business owner, this is far more useful tool. This combined with holistic decision making.
I think these two are the really great place to start. If nothing else, it's just those two.
Those two.
Yeah. Probably same thing, HDM. So this is what it looks like if you're not familiar with it, where you have your statement of purpose, like what are you here to do? And then your quality of life statements there, and then these are all your enabling actions that support those quality of life.
And quality of life is about how are you going to look after your quality of life and the other people in your organisation and your stakeholders while going about achieving your statement of purpose.
Yeah.
And then what resources are you going to have to develop in order to create that vision?
Yeah. This is like a business plan and condensed. It's really, really good.
Simplified part of it.
Oh yeah, okay. Is that working?
Yeah, push down.
Let's just have a little look. So, hang on. I'm going to show you some really cheesy pictures, so apologies for the cheesy pictures, but they are going to hopefully just illustrate some points, a little bit of conversation, okay? So this is like, well, what does it actually look like on a very, very practical note, okay? So first off, like well, what do you wear when you go and meet new clients, you know? Do you go with, you know, the dirt under your fingernails when you've just come from the garden? It's authentic, maybe. Do you wear a ball dress? You know, just think about who you are, be authentically you, but also professional. I just go smart casual, but it took us for a while. You know, I used to be a designer all in black, you know, but that wasn't appropriate. It didn't feel right for me. But yeah, anyway, just give thought to what you wear and how you present yourself. I know this sounds silly, but just be on time. You know, it's really easy to be slack, but that's not respecting your client's time. Yeah, this is a funny one. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but if this is sort of statistics for tradies. So essentially, if you, is it 5%?
Top 5%.
Yeah. So only the top 5% of, no, you explain it, Dan. You've got that one in your head better.
If you want, as a tradie, if you answer your phone,
that's it, yeah.
return messages and be on time, you're in the top 5% of
yeah.
trade.
So if you do that,
that's just,
yeah.
just those two things just to start with.
Yeah.
And then there's a few other things.
Yeah, I've gained work just from doing that. You know, being prompt with proposals, getting back to clients, being responsive to questions. It's simple stuff, but it really matters. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, always do what you say you will do. You know, that's kind of obvious as well. But if you say, oh, look, I'm going to get that, you know, we'll meet up and we'll go over your concepts on Wednesday. But you don't have them ready on Wednesday and you haven't let your client know. Simple. Tuesday, sorry, I'm not a bit pressed for time. Can we reschedule? So just do what you're going to say you're going to do, essentially. Integrity, obviously. Yeah, that's one of the things, like, you know, it would be for us, you know, just things like having an electric vehicle when we're going to site, for example. What's some examples of integrity? Like,
just following your values.
Yeah, just following your values in everything you do. You know, when you're printing things, it's on recycled stock. When you're printing, you know, we've done some signs recently and they're not on aluminium, they're on timber. You know, it's just making sure that everything you do is actually aligned with your values, because that gives you integrity.
Not gossiping about someone's case.
Oh, all of that. Yeah, all of that. You know, you guys know what integrity is, but it's really important when you're running an ethical business. You're judged, I think, a lot more in that respect. So, yeah.
Move on, Ben.
Okay, cool. Yep. Mistakes, you're going to make lots of them. We've made lots of mistakes. Obviously, they're gold. You can learn from those. Get feedbacks from your clients. Don't be shy to say, what could I have done better? Yep. Self-promotion, as we mentioned before, really struggled with that one ourselves, but have finally, I guess, you know, that comes with feeling confident that what you're doing, you know what you're doing, so that helps over time. Follow up, again, really important. Just as important as answering your phone is making sure that you follow up. I would say probably about 30% of my work comes because after I've met a client, I'm giving them a phone call in the next few days. Hey, did you want to go ahead? If you've got any questions. A lot of people are very shy to do that, and I am too. You know, it is difficult, but it does make a big difference on your workflow. And if I didn't have that 30%, I probably still wouldn't be in business. So, yep. Do design work that is actually good design work. It's practical. We install a lot of our projects, so when the rubber hits the road, we also have the practical component to our work, as well as doing beautiful work as well, we hope. And yeah, wow your clients. Very cheesy picture there. So we're having to race through it a little bit because I know that we started a wee bit later, but that's my biggest marketing. So a happy client, you know, wow your clients, under promise, over deliver. It's that old adage. They will refer you to the next person and the next person and the next person. I had I'll give you an example with the mistake one. We very, very rarely don't do well and make happy clients, but there was one time that we didn't about 2 or 3 years ago, and to rectify it, that we did about an additional 20 hours work, which was unpaid, hours, yeah. And they were absolutely stoked. And within 18 months, I'd had 4 new clients in that area because they became our biggest supporters. They really loved that we'd addressed the problem, and they loved what we'd come up with, and that generated... Okay, so this is what we were talking about with business network. So when we downscaled, and COVID came along, and I found that I was back on the kitchen table that's where I was working from, and we used to work from a co-working space. I found that I was getting quite lonely. I just didn't have that same collaboration. So I rang a few friends and colleagues. They weren't necessarily friends at the time, but I knew they were kind of a network. I'd already been referring them work, or I knew them professionally. And I set up we just call ourselves a Wahine collab, and it's 7 women from around New Zealand. We could be bigger, but on Zoom, other people have asked to kind of join in at the moment. We're keeping relatively small. But you're probably familiar with Kath Irvine. She's fantastic. Travelling. Amanda Jane, Everkind. She's won Organic Product of New Zealand 3 years running. So really amazing product. Deodorant. It's awesome. Joe, Kahakite Farm. Setha from Setha Seeds. Sarah, Edible Garden. Emily, Refood. Yeah, so just a great network of women. We catch up once a month for a cup of coffee. We support each other professionally. We bounce ideas around and have got that friendship and colleagueship. I thought this might be quite interesting because this is a pie chart of time in a week. People, I don't know if you've run a business before, people kind of think that the design side of it is what you're doing 100% of the time, but it's actually not. There's a lot of other aspects and hats that you have to wear. So marketing, back to that marketing question. So if you take this as a working week, say, 36 to 40 hours or so, I will spend around 3 hours in the week on marketing. Pricing and tracking, a similar amount of time. Management and HR, so that's about 2 hours. Just indicatively here. Strategy, so really stepping outside of my business and going, well, actually, which direction do I want to head? Is this where I want to go? What's working? What's not working? Emails, admin, and weekly planning. We all know that one. That can take up a lot of time. Buffer and overrun, just a little bit of flexi time. Resource development and professional development. Now, I might not necessarily spend 2 hours on that in the week, but I might spend 4 hours over the month going to a course or something like that. So, just on average. And sales, so that would be initials, proposals, and communication. That takes 2 hours a week. So already half of my week is taken up, and none of that's chargeable whatsoever. So the rest of it is design. So half of my time is doing the design. That has to pay for all of the other time that I'm spending on running a business too. So I don't know if that's interesting. That's just, yeah.
But it's really important for you to understand when you're pricing.
Yeah.
That, your pricing has to reflect this.
Yeah.
If your pricing doesn't reflect this, then you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
I'm going to push things forward because we're running time. So on the design side of things, we haven't allocated this out in times, but just thinking, you've got pre-design, that's all your site research, info review, site assessment, taking the client brief. So everyone that's doing this sort of work does that sort of stuff, but it takes up a bunch of time. And from the client's point of view, often you'll just come up to speed with where they're already at. So you have to understand they're not excited about that part of the stage necessarily. Concept design, that's when you're starting to put your ideas down. So we usually do 2 to 3 concepts, differing levels of service. I'd normally explain more about why we do that. It's really important not to just do one design. But we don't really have time. So preliminary design is a finalised or hybrid design. So after you've got feedback from your clients, adjusting your ideas to meet what they want and saying, okay, so this is where we're getting, is that right? And then from there, develop design, communicating the plan, and there's differing levels of service. So Bena will talk a little bit about that soon.
Yep.
Documentation, it's not required for all services. It depends whether or not what the aspects you're doing is going to go to council or near the councils, then you need to get into documentation to be able to do that. And then detailed design, and then obviously installation, which can be a whole business all in itself.
Yeah, it can. Hey, any questions around time allocation and where you spend your time in the week?
Just that there's also more costs than just that time. Like you've got your insurance, you've got all your...
Oh, yes.
Like in terms of pricing. And
overheads. Yeah. So when you have to address that, so when you have a chargeable hour, that chargeable hour, so this chargeable hour is covering, whatever other chargeable hour and your overheads as well. So insurances and, the copier machine or
your EV,
all of those. So, that one chargeable hour is actually split 3 ways, generally speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, in traditional terms, it should be 1/3 for the for labour, 1/3 for costs, 1/3 for profit. That's a very oversimplified idea.
Yeah, and when we say profit, I know that can sometimes come across as a dirty word, but if you don't make some profit, you cannot then put some money into a website or some marketing or do community work, which you're doing for free. You know, this is all part of, what those overhead, the profit side of the business can cover. Yeah. Cool.
We don't have much time to talk to this, but...
Yeah. So one of the things that we do a little bit differently from other businesses, and Dan started this with a different business, was we offer 3 different services. So three different levels of service. So we do sort of what we call like a basic sketch design. So that's sort of more DIY focused. It's giving all the juicy information, but without, often over top of aerials, without, the pretty pictures as such. Just really getting the juicy information down. Sustainable or mid-level, you can see this on our website, by the way. This is just a snapshot of the website. Sustainable or mid, which is 2 concepts and 2 developed designs, and regenerative end, which is 3 concepts and then 3 developed designs, essentially. Yeah, and clients can mix and match. It's a bit of a menu like when you go to a restaurant.
And I'll quickly let the screen do the talking of what I have been developing over the last few months. Humans have been building dwellings to protect ourselves and our loved ones from predators and extreme weather for as long as we've been walking the earth. Kia ora koutou, I'm Daniel Woolley, Director of Greenbridge, an impact enterprise based in New Plymouth, below the beautiful Maunga Taranaki. I reckon it's crazy that in New Zealand we're still building toxic homes, averaging over 180 square metres for 2.4 occupants, in an industry that produces over 40% of the country's landfill waste. These homes are being constantly and poorly redesigned at huge expense, taking up heaps of time and stressing out buyers in a process and at prices that fewer and fewer Kiwis can afford. Greenbridge's healthy home plans provide a better way. All our plans incorporate small footprint, optimised layouts with integrated storage, non-toxic material specification for healthy living environments. Every design utilises waste reduction and minimises environmental impact. All our plans are Homestar rated, meaning warmer, drier homes with lower running costs. They're independently quantity survey costed, giving you budget confidence from the get-go, and we're making them available for around 80% less than the cost of an equivalent custom design service. Greenbridge's healthy home plans are unique in that they are developed with the specific intent of addressing the challenges currently facing home buyers, and we are turning what is traditionally a high-cost custom service into a high-value repeat product. The benefits we are providing fit perfectly with the direction of both national and local government policies, and more importantly, our reduced cost, better design and better outcomes are exactly what the market is asking for. And as we are selling nationally using an online format, we also have the opportunity to scale our sales and work with our customers ranging from single owners through multi-home developments. Homes are such a core part of our communities and well-being, and we'd love for you to join us in creating a healthy home revolution.
Yay!
That's a nice response.
It's funny, I was thinking of when I was watching that, when I initially used to see that, I used to get sort of flush red and and the good thing about seeing it sometimes, I don't really care anymore. So I've seen it enough times. But so I was lucky enough to launch that in November 22, which is exactly when the market crashed. So hence, although we are still selling some, I'm not actively marketing that business or driving it at the moment because there's no point putting energy into a business that's not going to fly in the current market.
You are still working on it though, and still doing it. Yeah, still available.
In the current market, the only thing that would drive that would be partnership with a developer or a national sized building company that's going
So if that's you guys, if there's anyone in the crowd.
I am actually in conversation with both of those at the moment, but it doesn't happen overnight. So it's just a sort of become my side hustle effectively. But that was learning about investing lots of money, not doing the minimum viable product, and then not being able to sell the product at the end.
Cool. So there we go. So landscape examples. So this one, Claire will be familiar with. We might have looked at this one. So this is the sketch end, so the basic, what we call like base map and sector analysis, hand-drawn over top of aerial for expediency and just basically to keep the cost down as low as possible for a client. So we're still doing all the site assessment and digging holes and VSAs, etc., and looking at where the sun sectors are and where the winds come from and the like, but without going into a huge amount of detail. And then while I'm actually on site, so it's quite collaborative, we are doing a couple of sketches. So that's basically just sort of coming up with ideas that I can then run past my clients and say, hey, is this what you're after? Let's tweak it here, etc. Getting their feedback before I go away and do one developed design for them, sort of like a master plan, but again, it's over top of aerial, it's hand-drawn and it's sketchy just to get everything, all the right elements in the right place, but without a huge amount of detail, if that makes sense. So that's at the basic sketch end. And coming with that is a range of regenerative info guides that I've been developing over time. I find that people tend to ask the same questions about the same things. So, things like shelter or carbon yards for chooks or food forests, etc. So at this kind of base end, they're also getting generic information sheets as well to support their journey. Then I'm going to jump right to the regenerative end, which is sort of basically the high end where we're going into much greater level of detail. So this one is a project in Canterbury that I did last year, and it's a lifestyle block. So first of all, we're taking the brief, really important part of good design, good landscape design, or ecological landscape design, is a combination of three things. You're really understanding the client, so you're getting inside their head and understanding what it is their vision is. And the other aspect, of course, is doing the site assessment. So you're looking at the physical aspects of what is on the site, which is called your base map, and then the other aspect is all the sector analysis, which are the influences on the site. So that's the second important part. And then the third part is you as the designer, so your creativity and experience, bringing those three into the pot. And I did 3 concepts for them, but I've just got 2 up here to show you. And it's basically looking at different ways that you can develop the land. You're always going to be responsive to the site. So some things, you're not going to put, trees that don't like wet in wet places, for example. So you're always going to develop a wetland as a wetland, but there might be different ways to do it. For example, we looked at creating, actual ponds for overflow from an existing pond that was there. In other places, we just looked at planting that as a wetland, planting it out, so that more cost-effective version as well. And one of the aspects I really loved about this project was a rewilding of the back third of the property. So looking at ways that we could fast-track the regeneration of that site, actively and passively.
With that kind of stuff, when you have different concepts, particularly at that level,
yes,
there's a lot of pros and cons that are coming out and
correct.
trade-offs.
Yep.
So is that clear? Like, are you...
Pros, cons.
Oh, okay, there you go. Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought it's not that good.
No. But that's exactly it, because there are always pros and cons and trade-offs in any approach to a design. And so you're making that clear to the client as well. Yeah. Good question, Claire. Yeah. Cool. And then a master plan. So that's a regenerative master plan, looking at all of the features that are about healing the landscape, growing food, being responsive ecologically, being, regenerative principles essentially. So that sort of maps those out for the client. A separate planting plan when you can go into a greater amount of detail, which plant species specifically for that site. Like in the sketch design, I'll just be saying, shout about endemic natives. Whereas this one, I'm going, well, actually this species, this species, this species, this species. So it depends what the client's budget is, but also what level of detail they want, and we can cater to that. Then we do a strategies and recommendations, which is a written document that outlines essentially how to get from A to B. If this is where you are now, this is where you want to go to, how you can do that. And it'll be specific to that. I was going to say if you want to fund it. Yeah. And it'll be specific to the client, and the site. So this is going to change. This document, instead of those generic info sheets, this is specifically in response to this site and this client, if that makes sense. So different approaches that they can take, etc., to rewild at the end. Oh, and I just thought I'd throw this one in because I'm literally just finished it. This is 2 concepts for a 100-hectare farm in the Bay of Plenty, where they have quite a lot of issues with flooding, which is why they brought me in. So we needed, with Cyclone Gabrielle, they had a lot of slash come from upstream forestry. And so we needed to look at how we could mitigate that water flow and that flooding was the primary reason that they brought me on. But we were also looking at things like ETS, so trees over pasture. So that has the double advantage of looking at an economic yield for the property, which actually isn't suitable for farming, even though that's what they have been doing in the past before these clients bought it, but also trees high in the landscape, soak water high in the landscape. So again, it's going back to that regenerative principle of catch it before it concentrates. So rather than just overland flow, which is contributing to flood issues, we're actually holding the water high in the landscape. There's lots and little things happening there that I could go into. Where the rubber hits the road, so actual installs, these are just some that I've done this year. This one is in Havelock North, where we were planting a little native forest, but also dealing with erosion on a bank area over here. This one is in Taranaki, so that's replanting an endemic forest that ironically would have been there. The irony is my clients are paying me to replant areas that were just clear-felled a lot of the time, so reinstating native forest. Yeah. Oh, and that last one is an 11-acre food forest here in Taranaki. And that's about it. That's where we're at. And thank you for staying.